Greetings and welcome aboard Zach Back's Carousel of Theme Parks podcast. Now, most carousels just go round and round without getting anywhere, but on this one, we'll be talking theme parks. And now, here's your host, Zach Back. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. Now, as always, my name is Zach Back. Welcome in. And today, I'd like to, first of all, thank you for joining me on this episode. Also, thank you for checking out Knott's Berry Farm. I hope you enjoyed that episode last week. Knott's Berry Farm is definitely one of my favorite theme parks on the West Coast, outside of Disneyland, of course. But I've found a lot of great things, a lot of great connection to Knott's Berry Farm. And through that episode, I learned a lot more. So I hope you learned a lot more about the park and about its existence. In this week's episode, we're going to explore another West Coast theme park, one that you probably have heard of, but you've probably never been to. So I actually was able to visit this park last year during the holiday season. So in the after history portion, I will talk about my experience in the park during that period. But this park is SeaWorld San Diego. Now, SeaWorld San Diego is the original SeaWorld park. It is the first park. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of those origins. Where did that concept come from? And we'll really discover kind of those stories that have existed around that park. As well as we're going to touch on some of the historical aspects that have happened through the years at SeaWorld. So you may already know a little bit of what I'm talking about there. That's kind of in reference to some of the documentaries that have been made, as well as some of the other historical context stories that I really feel are important to get a full frame of reference for the park. So here, I hope you enjoy the episode and that you learn something new about SeaWorld San Diego. Of all of the aquatic-themed entertainment ventures out there, none is as iconic as the SeaWorld franchise. SeaWorld parks are all over the world, with currently 4 operating theme park resorts and one that no longer exists. Today, let's explore the history of this theme park concept with the original at SeaWorld San Diego. SeaWorld San Diego opened to guests on March 21st, 1964. However, its origins start slightly earlier when Marineland of the Pacific opened in Palos Verdes in 1954 as the world's largest oceanarium park. The initial success of this park inspired the eventual creators of SeaWorld, 4 UCLA graduates including George Millay, Milton Shedd, Dave DeMotte, and Ken Norris, to dream of a place where guests could be inspired by marine life. This original concept was not a park, however, and it was instead an underwater restaurant with a marine show. In 1958, Millay and 2 partners that included David Talichet formed Specialty Restaurants Corporation, a destination restaurant business. Their first location was a Polynesian-themed reef in Long Beach, California. More than 100 other restaurants across the U.S. followed, including the Proud Bird adjacent to Los Angeles International Airport and 94th Aero Squadron near Van Nuys Airport. After selling out of the SRC to Talichet, Millay envisioned creating an underwater zoo. After Marineland of the Pacific continued to be extremely popular, Millay and his fraternity brothers began to conceptualize what that would look like. Beginning in 1961, the San Diego City Council approved a 50-year lease with Marine Park Corporation, headed by George Millay, for the 22-acre Marine Park. SeaWorld San Diego opened on March 21, 1964. Located on the shores of San Diego's Mission Bay, reclaimed from a tidal marsh, the park is subject to substantial development restrictions from both the city and the California Coastal Commission, which limits how SeaWorld can develop the park to this day. The park opened with a host of attractions, including the dolphin and sea lion exhibits, the Japanese Village, home to Japanese pearl divers, a saltwater aquarium, the Sea Grotto, the Hawaiian Punch Village, and Theater of the Sea, featuring Sea Maids Underwater, a show for the park. The original entrance to SeaWorld San Diego was a tall wooden A-frame. Admission at the time was $2.25 for adults, $1.25 for kids aged 12 to 17, and only 60 cents for kids under 12. The park opened under the name SeaWorld, but eventually got rid of the space between the words to avoid confusion with another park named SeaWorld in Australia. Before killer whales became the icon of the park, SeaWorld started out with a dolphin show that took place in an enclosed area of Mission Bay, known as the Dolphin Lagoon. A separate stadium would eventually be built in 1971 to ensure that the dolphins lived in a filtered environment, which is the current Dolphin Stadium. Another area of the original park was the Theater of the Sea. Inside, the building was a 160,000-gallon rectangular aquarium with seats on all four sides. The aquarium housed a few dolphins and divers that would put on underwater shows, which, when paired with an exciting musical score and dramatic lighting, made for unforgettable experiences. Just like Disney's relationship with Dole, SeaWorld partnered with Hawaiian Punch to create an island-themed area in which specialty tropical drinks were served, which would be called the Hawaiian Punch Village. The Hawaiian Punch Village connected to the island in Dolphin Lagoon, enabling park guests to watch the dolphin shows from the stadium, island, and bridge. The Japanese Village aimed to bring Americans to a land where they'd never been before, and experience the culture of another country. The main attraction was a large saltwater pool, which held performances by Japanese pearl divers. Park guests would purchase a tin from the nearby store, and a diver would go to the bottom of a pool, grab an oyster, and drop the pearl into the tin. The Sea Grotto was the traditional aquarium building of SeaWorld. It housed 4 large aquariums with a variety of saltwater fish. These original attractions of the park started what would eventually become SeaWorld we see today. But one iconic moment is about to happen, the introduction of the killer whale to the park. Shamu, the third orca, or killer whale, ever captured, and the first healthy orca to be caught intentionally, came to the park in December of 1965, after being caught earlier that year in Washington's Puget Sound by a Seattle aquarium. For several years in the late 1960s, Shamu was featured prominently in SeaWorld's live shows, but in 1971, a harrowing incident would put an end to Shamu's performances. During a televised publicity stunt, SeaWorld PR Secretary Annette Eckes was instructed to perform with Shamu and ride on the young orca's back. With the cameras rolling, Eckes slipped off of Shamu's back and into the water. The killer whale quickly turned on Eckes, biting down on her leg and refusing to let go. Eventually, a trainer got Shamu to release Eckes by shoving a pole into the killer whale's mouth and prying it open. Eckes required more than 100 stitches and sued SeaWorld after the incident. Shamu was retired from the park's performance later that year. Shamu died of a combination of pyometra, or a uterine infection, and septicemia, or blood poisoning. She was 9 years old. Even after the incident and the tragic events, the name of Shamu became an iconic headliner for the park and was trademarked and used for decades as a title for the shows in connection to the orca species. As the 1960s continued, the park continued to change and grow. The Sea Lion Stadium opened in 1966. Bayside Skyride, a gondola ride that travels over Mission Bay, in 1967. And Freshwater Aquarium in 1968. Also in 1968, SeaWorld became a publicly traded corporation, allowing for greater investment, which would bring along a lot of growth. In 1969, brought the construction of the park's iconic ride, the Sky Tower, a 320-foot gyro tower constructed by Sensei Yusoki Co., Limited of Japan, which gives a view of San Diego and Mission Bay for guests. The 1970s ushered in an era of expansion as the SeaWorld company tripled in size for a second park, SeaWorld Ohio in 1970 and SeaWorld Orlando in 1973. In San Diego, 1971 brought the building of a separate stadium for the Dolphins to ensure that they would live in a filtered environment, which is the current Dolphin Stadium. The original Dolphin Lagoon would turn into a venue for acrobatic shows, including the classic Muscle Beach Show and Cirque de la Mer. By 1976, the SeaWorld company was purchased by textbook publisher Harcourt Brace Jovanovich, Inc. Under this new leadership, the park opened Penguin Encounter in 1983, which introduced the new species to the park. In 1987, HBJ bought and closed Marineland, bringing many of its marine mammals, including the park's famous orcas, Corky and Orky, to the San Diego SeaWorld. Corky continues to live and perform there today. In 1988, the first successful killer whale birth in captivity occurred in the park with Orkin in September. Also, SeaWorld San Antonio opens this year. As the 1980s come to a close, Anheuser-Busch purchases the company, including the 4 parks, as well as 2 other parks owned by Harcourt Brace Jovanovich in 1989 for $1.1 billion. 1990 marked the end of the Japanese Village, as it was transformed into Forbidden Reef, which showed off the park's collection of bat rays and the world's largest display of California moray eels. The 1990s otherwise saw very little change or expansion other than the opening of Shark Encounter and a motion simulator ride called Mission Bermuda Triangle in 1992. 1997 marked the opening of Wild Arctic, an animal exhibit featuring beluga whales, walruses, and harbor seals, as well as a motion simulator which replaced Mission Bermuda Triangle. During this new ride, guests would board the flight simulator to travel from the Franklin Exploration Center to travel to Base Station Wild Arctic. During this journey, the flight would observe polar bears and dove into the water to observe narwhals, and then return to flight again, where the flight encountered an Arctic storm with a breaking glacier, rock slide, avalanche, and ice flow, until they safely arrived at Base Station Wild Arctic. Guests would exit the ride and enter an indoor space complete with theming that mimicked an Arctic research station built around 2 historical sailing ships that have become trapped in the ice. The exhibit features several mammal enclosures, including beluga whales, Pacific walruses, and harbor seals. Multiple interactive exhibits can be encountered during the visit. Originally, polar bears were also part of the exhibit until one of the bears was shipped to the Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium in early 2017, and the second bear died suddenly. After this, SeaWorld San Diego chose to no longer feature the animals. Currently, the enclosure features southern sea otters instead. 1997 also saw the moving of the dolphins from the Theater of the Sea, as the theater was to be demolished for the next major attraction coming in 1999. In 1999, the park opened a river rapids ride called Shipwreck Rapids, and is themed to a South Pacific island where many ships and their crews have been marooned. The era of expansion for the park was just on the horizon, however, as SeaWorld San Diego crossed into a new millennium. 2004 opened the park's first roller coaster ride, Journey to Atlantis. The ride, manufactured by Mack Rides, opened as the second version of the ride, with the first opened in Orlando. This version lacks the large interior scenes that the Orlando version includes, but makes up for it with the addition of a much larger roller coaster ride. Also, the boats on this version have individual lap bars. In 2008, a new children's play area called Sesame Street's Bay of Play opened. 2009 marked another transition of power as the park was sold to Blackstone Group and renamed SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, which is now United Parks and Resorts. The next major addition would not come until May 26, 2012, with the opening of Manta, a Mack Rides launched roller coaster featuring 2 LSM launches, on the site of the Forbidden Reef, the Bat Ray Aquarium. Manta begins with a 270-degree projection media experience at the first launch. The train rocks forward and backward in synchronization with the projected film of a coral reef and school of rays. The media tunnel and film was produced by Falcon's Treehouse. 2013 served as a bombshell for the company, as the animal rights activist film Blackfish was released at the Sundance Film Festival and aired by CNN, exposing supposed mistreatment of orcas by SeaWorld. The release of this film served as the biggest negative press that SeaWorld has ever received in its history. To this day, the film is still brought up in conversations about the park and its animal programs. After a lot of recovery by SeaWorld to counter the claims, SeaWorld made the decision to end its orca breeding program in 2016. Moving beyond this period was critical for the company, and thus it continued investing in the park's attractions rather than animal exhibits. 2017 introduced Ocean Explorer, an area designed for children. The area was comprised of 3 attractions: Octorock, a swinging experience; Sea Dragon Drop, a scaled-down drop tower; and Tentacle Twirl, a wave swing ride with a jellyfish theme. The realm originally featured Submarine Quest, an outdoor people mover-like ride with indoor segments, themed around deep-sea exploration. The attraction would receive negative reviews due to lackluster theming. Due to this, it quietly closed indefinitely in 2019. SeaWorld staff initially indicated that Submarine Quest had been temporarily closed for maintenance, but on May of 2019, references to the ride had been removed from SeaWorld's maps and website. When the park reopened on April 13th of 2021, demolition of the ride track and show buildings began, leaving the animal enclosures intact. The next major addition came in 2018 with the Electric Eel, a Premier Rides Skyrocket 2 model steel launched roller coaster. The next year saw another addition with the Tidal Twister, a Skywarp Horizon model by Skyline Attractions. This ride only lasted until 2023, when it was removed permanently. 2022 marked another banner year with the addition of Emperor, a Bolliger and Mabillard dive coaster, which is the tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster in California. The roller coaster is named after the Emperor penguin, given the attraction's proximity to the park's Penguin Encounter exhibit, although the park does not plan to theme the station area or queue or add additional species, and thus makes the attraction queue and station extremely plain, considering the other roller coasters in the park. 2023 marked the closure and retheming of the children's play area to be called Rescue Junior, and features 3 rides: Tide Pool Twist, a spinning teacup attraction; Rescue Riders, similar to Dumbo the Flying Elephant; and Rescue Rafter, a raft-themed tugboat ride. This year also saw the most recent addition to the park with Arctic Rescue, an Intamin launched coaster that operates as a family coaster with an Arctic theming and is the fastest, longest straddle coaster in the West Coast. This roller coaster is located on the site of the former Wild Arctic. Today, SeaWorld San Diego still boasts an array of entertainment offerings meant to showcase and teach guests about sea life. SeaWorld San Diego is a member of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, or AZA. Adjacent to the property is the Hub's SeaWorld Research Institute, which conducts marine biology research and provides educational and outreach programs on marine issues to the general public. SeaWorld always has been and continues to be a San Diego landmark. In addition to its incredible rescue programs that have saved over 34,000 animals to date, the park does educational outreaches and partners with local schools to inspire future generations to care and protect our oceans. Alright, so welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of history about SeaWorld San Diego. As you noticed, that was probably one of the shortest histories I've ever had on this podcast, because honestly, as I said, there's not a lot of information out there about SeaWorld in general. So I know whenever I'm looking into the next episodes on SeaWorld, which I do plan to cover SeaWorld Orlando eventually, because that's my local version of SeaWorld. I actually went there today. I know whenever I go to these parks, we're going to have a little bit of more information, hopefully, since I'm more of a local here. What really got me is that SeaWorld really doesn't have a lot of books on the park, at least that I was able to find, or information about creation of SeaWorld. I know they like to really advertise the fact that they are one of the greatest sea animal kind of rehabilitation programs in the world. I do see that very, very prominently when I'm visiting SeaWorld. So when I visited SeaWorld San Diego last year, we actually got to go and visit some of the animals that were kind of recovering over in the special rehabilitation center that they have right next door to the park. And that was so amazing to see, because we actually got to see them really working with animals to try to get them ready to be releasable again. And we all, at this point, you should know that the animals that are in the park, so all of the different sea creatures that are in the park, they are all non-releasable animals. So typically they're rescues. They're animals that they want to make sure remain in good health, and they work with them to give them the best life possible, because if they essentially just release them back into the wild, they may not survive very long. So that's kind of the idea behind SeaWorld. SeaWorld is a rescue and rehabilitation and recovery center. So it's really a beautiful place in its own history. Of course, it's had a rough time through the years, but I don't like to sit too long on that. Because today we're talking about the park in general. We're talking about the theme park itself and the story that it represents, and kind of the history of that. Now, you may have heard at the very beginning of the episode, I mentioned George Millay. George Millay was a crucial part of the development of SeaWorld. I mean, he was one of the groups of founders, but he was probably the ringleader of the founders, which is pretty cool to talk about, pretty cool to understand. So I've heard that name everywhere. I actually found out he also helped to found Magic Mountain, which we will talk about eventually. It's now Six Flags Magic Mountain. It's in kind of north of Hollywood area, so that's really cool. But it's interesting that he also helped found that. But what I found really neat about this is that, they originally intended for it to be an underwater restaurant with a water show that you could see through windows in the restaurant. Now, what does that sound like? Well, I actually just ate there today. That's Shark's Underwater Grill in SeaWorld Orlando. So they eventually made it happen. Now, are there underwater sea shows? No, not necessarily. But that's really cool nonetheless that it did happen. It kind of came full circle for the history and the kind of the story of that, and eventually got built in SeaWorld Orlando. So, of course, we'll get into the history of SeaWorld Orlando eventually, but really SeaWorld as a story kind of interconnects so fluidly between all of the different parks, because the creation of one park inspires the creation of another park, or inspires the updates in another park. So some of the things that changed in SeaWorld San Diego happened because SeaWorld Orlando opened. So it's really interesting kind of see how that kind of connects together. So we'll get into that eventually. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my visit to SeaWorld San Diego. And I will have to say, my personal opinion is that SeaWorld San Diego is better than SeaWorld Orlando. Now, that's going to be a really rocky opinion, because there are, regrettably, some better rides in SeaWorld Orlando. But I like the design of SeaWorld San Diego. I mean, it's the original Sky Tower. They built it first in 1968, I believe. But they built the Sky Tower there, and that was the first thing. It's in the center of the park. Well, at least today's park, at least. It wasn't the center of the park back then. I looked at some maps, and the way the park kind of doubled in size over time is fairly fascinating, because it kind of just expanded from Mission Bay itself and went more inland to include a lot more land. Especially, I'd say probably the farthest point of the park itself is the Emperor roller coaster now. It's kind of almost out in the middle of this green grassy patch, which is why I mentioned it, that the station itself and the queue is completely unthemed. It's just it looks like something I built in Roller Coaster Tycoon, in my opinion, but it's pretty neat. It's just kind of sitting there by itself, and it has this just one little station, and it's not even covered. I think it had some tarps over it. That was it. Not even a building, which was pretty interesting nonetheless. But I really liked that attraction. But beyond that, anyway, so SeaWorld San Diego. So I've only been here once, but so I'm giving you my first look kind of perspective. We arrived here just to give a little caveat to this, that I did this as a part of a complimentary experience. So I did not pay to enter SeaWorld San Diego, but I have paid. I was a pass holder at the time to SeaWorld Orlando, so I have paid for this experience before. And I just overall liked SeaWorld San Diego's design a lot more. I love the entrance kind of area because it was designed recently, like redesigned, not too long ago. I couldn't remember. I did see that somewhere in one of my sources. I did not include it in the history portion because it wasn't like a major attraction change. It was just kind of a park look change. But the original park entrance, that A-frame that you see probably photos about, it's like little paintings and photos. They have a lot of stuff right now celebrating 60 years of SeaWorld, kind of with that A-frame design. And it didn't really occur to me that SeaWorld used to be 2 words, and they kind of mushed them together in order to make sure it didn't infringe upon an Australian park called SeaWorld. So that was pretty, but you'll see that little A-frame entrance. Well, the front entrance of SeaWorld San Diego today is not that. It kind of feels like you're entering a sea-themed park. And that's honestly the goal. That's what I expect entering SeaWorld, is a sea-themed park. I will say the parking lot experience was not so great, but once we got out of the car and parked and just walked to the front, entering the park was a much better experience for me. Personally, in my opinion, comparing it to SeaWorld Orlando. When you walk in, you're greeted with some touch pools and some little tide pool spaces. And then you have the sky tower towering straight back behind, like in front of you. And then you have little gift shops along the left side and along the right side. And then you start to see the park kind of branch out from this central entrance point. You see exhibits start to kind of pepper their way out in each direction. You see like the pathways start to kind of spread out like a spider web around the park. And then we just kind of started on one end and worked our way around the park. And it was really interesting to see the differences, but also it feels so similar to SeaWorld Orlando for me, since I'm in Orlando, currently homed in Orlando. Like it seems so familiar, but at the same time, it was better designed. We just fully had a great experience here, and I loved this park. I liked the attraction experiences a lot. I think that their version of Manta here is very interesting because I found out in one of the sites that I was looking at, I think it was like Roller Coaster Database. I don't even think I used that as a source because I really didn't pull any information from that. But essentially, Manta at SeaWorld San Diego is the same exact model of roller coaster as Blue Fire Mega Coaster in Europa Park in Germany. So we've already covered Europa Park in Germany, and that was really cool to understand that Blue Fire Mega Coaster, this is the real world version of that. So always remember, Europa Park is the model park. This is where theme parks come and visit and see rides, and they go, I want that in my park. And then they just tell Mac Rides, and then they're like, okay, we'll put it on, we'll build it for you. How do you want it designed? So in the case for SeaWorld San Diego, they asked for the Blue Fire kind of theme, but they wanted a very low-flying roller coaster. Now, this is because of those California Commission codes, like code enforcement type information there, because I did mention that at the very beginning, that the park was unique in the fact that it was approved by the San Diego city council, but it was also subject to all of the planning restrictions for the city of San Diego and Mission Bay. So they have a lot of rules they have to follow. Like, one thing I found was that they had to keep roller coasters pretty low on the horizon, right close to the shore. They can't be really tall. You can't have a lot of tall things without a lot of extra approvals. And then one of them, Electric Eel, the roller coaster, is actually designed because there's only a certain shade of blue it can be painted above a certain height. So it's in order to kind of blend the look of the roller coaster with the sky. Because it also has to always be painted Bye-Bye Blue. Which, if you're a Disney fan, you know what Bye-Bye Blue is. That's pretty cool. Because they kind of were forced to do that in this park, which is fine because SeaWorld kind of paints all of their roller coasters blue, shades of blue, so it works. But that was a pretty interesting thing that I learned here on the history of this episode. but that they have to also like follow a lot of very specific planning rules when it comes to making certain roller coasters, depending on where they're putting them in the park, or not even just roller coasters, but certain structures or rides also have to follow these same kind of ideas. Now, we kind of just walked the park very slowly. It wasn't a very busy day. All of the roller coasters were a walk-on that day that we were there. But we did visit some of the aquarium spaces. Not a lot of them. I will level with you. I typically love to explore the aquariums in SeaWorld. This park, I did not explore very many of them, if at any. So, oops, sorry on my part. I did like the experience, though, at Manta, as I said. And I found out that one of the gift shop at the end of Manta is the original gift shop for the park. There's also a space over here that is original to the park. There's a aquarium that's kind of connected nearby Manta. That was one of the original aquariums when the park opened, so that's pretty neat too. But as we walked through the park, we were actually there during SeaWorld's Christmas celebration in San Diego, which was pretty awesome because they really go all out at SeaWorld for Christmas time. And I'm not kidding, when they really stretch lights everywhere. And this park is the park that you will see the Sky Tower have lights that stretch from the very top of the Sky Tower all the way down to the ground, all around the park. So it looks like a giant Christmas tree, a 320-foot tall Christmas tree. That's actually pretty amazing. And I wish SeaWorld Orlando did that. That would be amazing to see all around Orlando, this huge tower, the largest Christmas tree in Florida. That would truly be it. I don't know why they've never done it. I really don't know. Maybe they just can't get the permission here to do it. Maybe that's the case. It may be too close to the airport for them to do that. I don't know. There may be some reason why they can't. I know. I just wish they could because it's so cool. I was amazed by it because it was so massive. You could see it anywhere you were in the park. It was truly a great way to do it. And actually, since I said earlier that I actually was visiting SeaWorld Orlando today, I was in the park, the current SeaWorld Christmas Celebration merchandise actually has the SeaWorld San Diego Sky Tower with the lights on it on the front of those t-shirts and those blankets and everything that they have, those tote bags. So if you're in the SeaWorld parks here, during the Christmas celebration, you'll see those. It's pretty cool. But there's a lot of great Christmas kind of themes here. They don't quite go to the same extent as Florida does for shows. They don't have a really huge venue for those type of things. They do have a couple venues with shows. So if you are a local to San Diego, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. Or if you visited SeaWorld San Diego's Christmas celebration, then you'll find those shows. We did not get to experience those shows while we were there. We did get to catch the parade here, which was pretty cool. I remember also walking by a real reindeer, which was interesting to see. There was maybe a couple real reindeer, and they had a pile of snow, like real snow, just laying there. Now, we're sitting in Southern California right now. I really don't know how they did that, but they did it. It was pretty cool to see it. And to kind of see those real live reindeer right there in the park, kind of just chilling near the Santa meet and greet area right at the base of the Sky Tower. So there was a lot of little things that they create when it comes to the Christmas SeaWorld Christmas celebration. So definitely a peak time to visit. They also have a small, like a Christmas parade type experience that they do roll out this time of year. I do believe it had Sesame Street. No, it wasn't Sesame Street. It was Shamu characters. So if you're not aware, SeaWorld has a collection of characters called Shamu and the Crew. And there's a whole bunch of different characters from different animals and sea creatures around this different sea life from SeaWorld. And they have their own name, and they're like an animated character. I didn't find a lot of information about this, but I think in the future episode about SeaWorld Orlando, I will cover Shamu and the Crew a little bit more. But they're kind of the characters that existed in the very early years for SeaWorld. So they're special characters they created just for them, and they're pretty cool nonetheless. So we kind of hopped between roller coasters for this park. We had plans that evening, so we had to just kind of get going. But we were there for most of the day up to like sunset, and we got to see all the lights really start to shine. We did go through the penguin exhibit, which was really quite interesting. It was a very different way of doing it. I actually prefer that design over the one we have in Orlando for the penguin exhibit. It was kind of like a moving walkway that you just stood on, and it drove you by the giant window with all of the penguins, which was mean you didn't actually have to walk into the cold penguin exhibit. It was very neat. But the roller coasters here are fantastic. The newer roller coaster, it was really great. The Arctic one that was in Wild Arctic's old space. It was a very good roller coaster. I liked that one a lot because it was like a snow. Oh my gosh, what's it called? Not a snowboard. It's the kind of the little motorcycle that goes through snow. Yeah, that thing. You know what I'm talking about. I don't need to talk about it. But it's like you're riding on that and you're zooming across like low, fast turns and curves. It was really great. It's a family coaster, so it's really, really quite a lot of fun. And I enjoyed that a lot. I like a lot of those little fast, like low hills family coasters. They're a lot of great fun. As it goes there, I also did experience the Emperor roller coaster, which was a dive coaster. I really like dive coasters, and this one was a good one as well. It was just fairly short. I do think I like hang time over at Knott's Berry Farms when it comes to California. I think I like it a little bit more than Emperor, but I love a good Bolliger and Mabillard dive coaster. Tigress at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay is fantastic and my favorite dive coaster of all time. But this one was a fairly short version of that, and I still enjoyed it, but there was just not a lot to see over here. As I said, there's nothing in the station. The station doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of switchback queue and then like a very bare covered station. That's it. We did not get to ride Electric Eel because I'm not personally a fan of those type of roller coasters because it's a Premier Rides roller coaster. I'm not a super huge fan of that type and that style of roller coaster, but we also just kind of ran out of time. We wanted to leave the park, honestly. There's not a lot of roller coasters in this park. There's a few, but at the same time, I could see more. There's not a lot of attractions in the park either, but the park is really well designed. It's well set up. That kind of hub and spoke design is really a great experience. While we were here it's not really a hub and spoke, but it's kind of a center and it kind of spreads out type thing. While we were here, we also experienced Dine with Orcas, which is a special experience that SeaWorld parks typically have, where there's a glass kind of a wall right next to the orca exhibit to their habitat. And then they have some trainers come out and kind of stir up the orcas a little bit while you're eating from a buffet, which is an interesting concept. But something they don't tell you is that the water will get over the glass that they have protecting you from the orcas, and it will soak your table and all your food, which is a great concept. It was a lot of fun, but I was sitting right next to the window and I got fully soaked with saltwater orca water while I was eating my like chicken nuggets, and I was so crazy. Like, it was a crazy experience. I have a picture of me getting soaked and a whole video of it happening because one of my friends happened to be like taking a video of it happening. And as soon as the water splashed over, I was just like done. But the food was good. I will say the food was good. And so it was a great experience nonetheless. It was a memorable experience. It may not have been the experience I expected, but it was memorable nonetheless. So as I said, we also were able to visit the rescue center here on the property. We got to see a couple different animals that were being held for rescue in like a quarantine tanks so that they could get better. They were being given appropriate medications and time to heal before they're out and back in the ocean where they belong. And they were working with those animals, and the spaces were really well designed for what they were doing. And they had a huge tank with some dolphins in it that were being rehabilitated, and it was a beautiful kind of visible thing because it's right on the coast. You don't actually understand how SeaWorld San Diego is quite literally on the edge of the ocean. Like, it's on the edge of California, and it's in Mission Bay, which is just this bay overlooking the ocean. So it's right there. They literally can just, roll the cart down to the shore and let the animals loose when they're ready, which is a great experience. Now, I know they don't actually do that. They will take them to where they're supposed to be, to their nearest pod in the case of dolphins, or grouping. No matter what kind of animal it is, they'll take them to where they're naturally supposed to be. But it's pretty neat to be able to look right out and see the ocean right there, and see the sea right along the side of this place. So I was fascinated to kind of to see that as a part of this park. This theme park is just sitting here, and it's just overlooking the actual, place it's celebrating. It's overlooking the sea, and that's a really neat offering. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there was anything else about SeaWorld San Diego that I would want to talk about. But honestly, we got a really good look at this park, and it was a very well designed park. The SeaWorld Christmas celebration was beautiful here in the park. I really love what SeaWorld does with the holidays. It's definitely a very, very priority holiday experience. So if you're looking for something maybe a little bit different from those mainstream holiday experiences, this is a great one to try to visit. And it will become your favorite year after year, especially if you do the shows and you do the special experiences. You do some of the kind of the pay for items where you can buy experience where you can go in and feed the animals in certain exhibits. That's a cool experience to do as well. I've never done one of those, but I've heard good things about them. So depends on what your budget is looking to kind of expand for. You will find what you're looking for at SeaWorld no matter where you are. And SeaWorld San Diego is definitely a really good offering for those who are in the area of San Diego or want to make a trip out to the original SeaWorld park. It's a beautiful park with a lot of beautiful animals who are living their lives out here because there's just simply nowhere else that they can go to finish their lives out. And which is a sad idea, but at the same time, we can learn more about these animals while they're here. And for the ones that are being rehabilitated to eventually be re-released into the wild, then we can understand them more while they're here so that we can help the future of sea animals at SeaWorld and around the oceans, wherever we may be. And I know that's the kind of goals of SeaWorld in this context. Of course, SeaWorld's been through a lot with the various documentaries. I mentioned them in the episode and at the beginning as well, with Blackfish, as well as some of the other accidents that have happened with animals throughout the years, with trainers and such. But there's a lot to it. And we see that's one perspective of the story, and it's always good to get a full perspective. So I tried to give a fairly well-rounded version on this podcast. I know I didn't do it justice, and please note that I'm not a super, supporter of some of these things, but I do want to cover every fact that I can. And I thank you for listening to this episode of SeaWorld San Diego. As I said, I don't think I have anything else about this park. There was a lot to it, but at the same time, there's not a lot to it. The park is really cool, and I really can't say anything bad about it per se. I enjoyed it. It was really it was a very clean park. It was very well maintained, and it looked beautiful. And the animals were very entertaining to kind of, not entertaining, but educational to experience. It was neat to see them in those experiences and learn more about these animals in SeaWorld. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Carousel of Theme Parks podcast. I'm going to finish up the episode a little bit earlier than usual. This is going to be a shorter one, but we'll pick up next week with our next theme park. I know what it's supposed to be, but I can't remember it right off the top of my head. So we'll pick up there, and you'll see on my next experience more about the next park we'll talk about. But you'll pick up here in just a moment where I'll give you some more information about the sources that I used in this episode. And as always, I actually went back and edited all of my episodes descriptions, so they should already be matching, but I added an extra link at the bottom of every episode to essentially a Google Drive folder where I have a PDF copy of all of my notes from that week's episode. And starting in episode, I believe it was episode 4, I have been very meticulously notating with footnotes and links in the footnotes where I'm pulling information from directly from each paragraph. So as I go through, if I add something from a website, just like an in-text citation, I'm using footnotes instead. So if you're interested in that and you want to see that, or maybe read along with the episode and see where I flub the lines or mess up constantly, then go ahead. But you can read along to the episode if you'd like, because I'm actually giving you at least the history portions of my episodes. Now, all of the second parts of my episodes are all completely ad-lib, as you can probably see me talking in circles sometimes. But regardless, I'm doing my best to kind of give as much information as I can, as well as my own personal experiences in these situations. So thank you again for listening to this episode. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about SeaWorld San Diego. And if you've never been to SeaWorld San Diego, I highly recommend you try it someday if you're ever in San Diego, California. Now, would I recommend making an entire trip out here to see SeaWorld? Maybe not, unless that is your passion. If marine biology is a passion for you, this is going to be a very key location to learn more about marine life in a context of rehabilitation. I will say that. This park is, as much as SeaWorld Orlando also does similar things, SeaWorld San Diego has the facility here, right on the side of the ocean, to where they don't even need to take sea life anywhere too far from the ocean in order to get the help that they need. So it's pretty neat nonetheless. And I really found nothing but really passionate people working here at SeaWorld San Diego. So I definitely recommend visiting if you happen to be in the area. As I said, unless you're a marine biologist in the making, maybe it's not a plan a trip here type place, at least for now. That doesn't mean in the future it won't become that. But right now, that's my opinion on it. Now, as I said, my opinion's only worth so much, and it's probably a little sack of beans opinion. But regardless, I do believe this park is beautiful. It's a wonderful experience, and I know that they're doing great things for animals all over the world. So can't wait to kind of revisit it someday. Hopefully, I will get back there whenever I make a California trip in the future. I currently don't have any plans to go to California, but I want to go back to Knott's Berry Farm so badly. I can taste the boysenberry. So I have to get back there. And then SeaWorld San Diego is a really nice drive because San Diego is a beautiful city. If you've never been to San Diego, California, that's a trip in itself. You could probably go and make a whole visit of it. And I didn't even mention that they also have a water park that's part of SeaWorld San Diego, but it's a few minutes away from the park, which is interesting. It's nowhere nearby. It's actually quite a few miles away, but it's still there. They do have it, and it's been converted, I believe, to Sesame Place. So it's really cool, but Sesame Place is also operated by United Parks and Resorts. That's why they call it United Parks, because it's not just SeaWorld. It's also Busch Gardens, and now it's Sesame Place. So there's lots of offerings. But anyway, I'm going to stop jabbering away, and I'll invite you to join me on the next episode as we take another spin around the carousel for another History of Theme Parks episode. Thanks for listening as this second season, episode 2 of SeaWorld San Diego. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carousel of Theme Parks podcast on SeaWorld San Diego. Now, a lot of this episode had the history portions. I pulled sources from Wikipedia. I will be honest, I don't love using Wikipedia for episodes about history because these are kind of a fan source place, but at the same time, the ones that I found were credible spaces. They came from credible sites, and it was the only information I could find about certain topics. So it was kind of just, I went somewhere and then went to Wikipedia to kind of find out detailed information about that specific thing, but I found the timelines elsewhere. I also used some of the sources from Theme Park Insider. This is where a lot of my information came from. There's a really great website blog out there. It's called Theme Park Insider. If you've never visited it, the editor there. He does a lot of great kind of breakdowns of certain topics that are pretty interesting to read. So if you've never found anything on Theme Park Insider, it's a good spot to kind of reference in some cases. I also found some information from biographies.net for George Millay, as well as a few other side sites that you will find in the sources on the episode description. As always, I do invite you to follow me on all of my platforms. I'm on Instagram mostly. I also have a Facebook page that I try to post on. I also have an X account, which is also previously known as Twitter. And I have a YouTube page. This is where all of my episodes are also posted. And if you're listening to this already, then you've probably found somewhere to listen to it. But I have it available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. I've got it on YouTube. So there's lots of options out there for if you're in the mood to listen to my podcast. And I also want to thank, because Spotify Wrapped just came out for a lot of our friends out there on the Spotify networks. Now, I personally use Apple Music, so this is weird for me to be uploading this to Spotify and then it gets distributed everywhere else. But, and being an Apple person, I happen to have a lot of music in my Apple library, and it just kind of works to have it all together in one nice place. I get it. But thank you for those of you who messaged me about being the top podcast you listen to on your Spotify Wrapped. That's so cool. For me to be this brand new podcast, I've only made, 5 or 6 episodes. No, I've made 6 and then 7. I've made about 8 or 9 episodes. Like, for that, that's not bad to already be on everyone's Spotify Wrapped. That's cool. So thank you for those of you who have been listening very patiently with me. Please note that this episode was really hard for me in a way, because I don't like to talk bad about theme parks, but SeaWorld has had a lot of negative publicity over the years. And I also feel like I need to cover some of those negative publicity moments, because that's what kind of creates the SeaWorld we see today. And given that it's a sea life park, there's a lot of also negative things about it. So thank you for kind of pushing through that with me, because it's really hard to talk about this type of thing in a theme park, because I really love the fun of theme parks. And talking about these kind of negative moments in time is really kind of a downer for me, but I know it needs to be covered. That's good journalism. Not that I'm a journalist. I'm not saying I'm a journalist. Please don't, don't post that to the world that I'm a journalist, because I'm not. I might be writing a book. Teehee. If for those of you out there who know that, in case you missed it, I might be writing a book, but we'll see that. We'll see. If you have questions, ask me in person, or message me, whatever. But regardless, thank you for listening to this episode of the Carousel of Theme Parks podcast. For the last 15 minutes, I've just been jabbering, so I'm sorry. If you have places to be, go. Anyway, have a great rest of your day or whenever you're listening to the podcast, and you'll join me on the next ride around the carousel. Bye-bye.